It almost makes me wish we could open the sides and let a breeze blow through. Sometimes there's people sitting around who listen to what I say and they take a hint. Sometimes they all just ignore me. Hello, Vic. I'm glad to see you. Are you all having a good time? Good. I am so glad. It's warm, isn't it? Because I'm a better, or at least I think I'm a better writer than I am a speaker, I've spent some time putting together some things that I want to say to you, but I'm going to read most of it, if that's all right. Have you been enjoying what you've been learning so far today? I am so glad. I'm going to have to put on some glasses to read this, which means my age is showing. All right. Hello, everyone. I am Rory Feek. I own this beautiful farm and am part of putting on the Homestead Festival, along with many other friends and family members. Well, these are so dirty I can't see anything. My sister-in-law was on the porch, and I grabbed the front of her shirt, and I wiped it, but she's so sweaty it made it worse. Thank you, ma'am. She didn't offer me her shirt. She's sweaty. I own this farm and part of putting on the Homestead Festival, along with many other friends and family members. I am so glad that you are all here today, and I'm also thankful for the opportunity to get to stand up here this afternoon and share a little bit of my own personal homestead journey with you. Let me say first what a thrill it is to have you all here, to know that you've taken time out of your busy schedules to get in your car or on an airplane and travel here to our farm to spend the weekend learning. Hopefully some things that you can take back home with you that will enrich your lives, and it is such a blessing to me to know that you're here. Thank you for coming. It is my honor to get to be even a small part of this event. This weekend you're going to have the opportunity to hear a lot of people talk about how to homestead, how to grow, harvest, and preserve food, how to raise and care for cows, process chickens, butcher a pig, how to homeschool, etc. And although we are doing many, if not all of those things here at our farm, I am far from an expert at any of them. So I will let the others who are more experienced share that information with you. What I am personally even more passionate about than growing our own food is growing a life filled with meaning and purpose. And for me, those two things are deeply, deeply connected. One tends to lead to the other, and meaning and purpose is what most of us are looking for, actually longing for, when we begin homesteading, whether we realize it or not. I spent 20 years or more of my adult life chasing musical dreams that the world said would bring me happiness, would fill the emptiness inside me, and in time, fortunately, most of those dreams came true. But with all the success I had as a songwriter, and that my wife Joey and I had together as singers, with the Grammy Awards, the financial blessings, the fame, both and she and I felt empty still. When we were at the top of what the culture said we were supposed to be aspiring for, we just kept looking around and asking, what does any of this actually matter in the scheme of things? Now, don't get me wrong, I know music can be a powerful thing and it touches a lot of lives. I am thankful for each and every part of the journey I've got to be on and that I still get to participate in with music. But for us, it was clear that something inside Joey and I wanted and needed something more than just worldly success, more than more money, more than more stuff. And so over time, we began looking deeper into ourselves and seeking out the things in life that could last the test of time, that we could not poke a hole in, choices we could make and actions we could take that in years to come, we would never regret for ourselves, for our family, or for our community. And after years of traveling the country and the world, playing music and seeking happiness and joy and peace, our journey led us back home physically and figuratively to the place where we started in the first place. Back here to the farm where we began planting seeds into soil that would take root and nourish much more than our egos and bank accounts. We started with a garden, the one you see as you look back at the farmhouse just right over there, rows upon rows of carrots and kale, broccoli and Brussels sprouts, okra and corn coming out of our ears. And from there, we added some chickens. From McMurray Hatchery, we ordered baby chicks who in time became hens, who in time became eggs, who in time became more hens. And we started reading every book we could find on homesteading and watching Joel Salatin videos together, where he showed us how to build a chicken tractor, how to raise meat birds, and then how to process them when it was time for them to go from the freezer to the frying pan. And you know what? We loved it. We were growing food for our family, and even more than that, we began to understand that we were beginning to grow a life filled with meaning. And it was meaning that we were wanting. Yes, all the planting and processing, the weeding and watering was way more work than just driving to Kroger, but it was way better. The vegetables and the meat was better, and at the end of the day, it was better for us, and we knew it. My wife, Joey, especially knew it. Like a lot of the men today that are here, it was my wife, like your wives probably, who helped me find the answers to some of the questions I had been continually asking, like, why isn't this making me happy? And even though I'm succeeding in achieving my goals, why do I feel so unfulfilled? All the while, in her gentle way, she would pull me into the garden with her, and while we worked, she would let me go on talking and ranting, knowing that the answer, or at least one of the answers, was right in front of me. And when I finally began to have some big aha moments, and I told her that I think there's something incredibly fulfilling about being here, about growing our own food. She was kind enough to just smile at me and say, "Really? You think so?" Now, sadly, my sweet wife passed away very young. She was only 40 when she died from cancer in 2016 and is buried in the family cemetery just over there. And of course, it was incredibly hard for me. One of the reasons it was difficult was because she was so health conscious. If you ever met her, she took really great care of herself. She grew much of her own food and always ate well. She exercised and made the right choices for her health, and yet cancer took her. I struggled with that at first, thinking, what is the point? Why even bother? There are so many people everywhere out there who are not even trying to take care of themselves, and they're basically doing fine. And here my wife is, who's done all the right things, and she passes away from cancer. But in the end, I realized that making these choices, choosing to take care of ourselves and our families and taking responsibility for our health, does not guarantee that we will live a long life, but it does guarantee that we will live a better one. After Joey passed, which has been 7 years now, I began planting more seeds, some of them in the soil, and some have been planted in different ways, in the hearts of people and in hopes and dreams. Since Joey wasn't able to homeschool our little girl, Indiana, over time I had to come up with another plan, and from the smallest of ideas came the beautiful schoolhouse that she and the other children have been going to now for the last 4 years. Across from there, in the big red barn that was once a place that stored our lawnmower, tools, and a tractor, that place has become an incredible concert hall and sound stage where I can not only do concerts at home and other people do concerts, but we can film them in almost anything and share it all over the world in real time. The 6.5 acres we had when we first moved here in 1999 has grown to 100, and both of my sisters, Candy and Marcy, and their families moved onto the farm on both sides of our farmhouse. Some of those early seeds that Joey and I planted, God watered. And in March of 2020, when COVID sent everyone home, I found myself and my extended family, my sisters and their grown children, all together on my back porch. And for the first time, they looked at the garden we had and the farm we lived on and thought maybe there is something we could and should do all together. And so they began to get involved. A couple of my nieces invested their time in learning how to garden, and my nephew Dalton quit working at Moss Tacos and began farming here full time, and this place truly became alive. Now most of our family is involved here in the farm in one way or another, and they are a very big part of the team of folks who've worked so hard to put on this festival. All of that to say, the more time I spend in the homesteading space of 2023, the more I find myself actually rethinking what homesteading itself is today, and how and what building a more sustainable life is and will be in the new millennium. I have come to the conclusion that homesteading today is probably less about the soil and the food we grow and more about the choices we make with regard to our health and our family and our community. It's about questioning and ultimately getting off the fast-moving train that culture has us on, barreling towards an uncertain future. It's about planting a flag in our minds and making the often unpopular choice in today's culture of deciding enough is enough. It's about choosing the life you want and your family to live, and then taking the necessary actions to bring it to be. It isn't just about taking responsibility for where our food comes from. It is about taking responsibility for our lives, for the well-being of ourselves, of our families, and our communities. Homesteading today is about seeing the big picture and how everything is interrelated. It encompasses the use and the responsibility we have for technology that's available to us, and recognizing the fast food culture we live in today and choosing something better. It's about pushing back against the world's insatiable bent towards ease and comfort, towards speed and sameness and cheapness, and about choosing what is better for us, for all of us. On a visit to his farm, Polyface, Joel Salatin once told me, once you begin to question where your food comes from, you will start to question everything, and he was right. Not long after my wife and Joey and I began to think differently about our food and how we might participate differently in the growing, harvesting, and cooking of the meals we eat, we began to think differently about the education of our children, and about our health in general, and about technology, and about entertainment, and about community. And when you do that, when that happens, it's as if out of a deep slumber your eyes will begin to open, and it is a great awakening. At first, just a little bit, but then little by little your eyes open wider and wider, and you begin to see the world and everything in it in new, real, honest ways. And quite often it is shocking. You will find yourself in the same places you've always been, but for the first time you can see what was right in front of your eyes but never noticed before. One day you will be having dinner at a restaurant with your family, and you will realize there are 15 big screen TVs on every wall, filled with the latest sports and news. And almost every man, woman, and child there are just sitting, eating together, silently staring aimlessly at their devices, never saying a word to each other, or keeping an eye on the sports on the television. And even if you wanted to, you wouldn't be able to hear anyway. You'll also realize that most restaurants are this way now, and you'll think, why have I not noticed this before? And perhaps you will eat out at restaurants a bit less and cook more at home. And then another day you will be pumping gas at Love's or Quick Mart, and you'll go in to pay, and you'll stand in line and look around and realize that there is not a single healthy thing inside there. Pretty much every single item on every rack, especially food or snack-wise, is there to only appeal to our lower selves, to the part of us that craves sugar, caffeine, and junk. It is as if there is no conscience whatsoever to help the buyer try to be better people. They want us to be unhealthy, or more likely, they just want our money at whatever cost. And you will be dumbfounded and begin to think, I don't know why I want to buy gas from here. I'm not sure I want to participate in this. Or another time you'll be standing in the checkout line at Walmart or Kroger like you've done hundreds and hundreds of times. You will look up and suddenly realize that as far as you can see, everyone, and I mean almost every single person, is 50 to 100 200 pounds overweight. Just about every cashier, deli worker, bagger, every customer. And it is shocking. And you will think to yourself, how have I not noticed this before? Or you will be driving somewhere, letting your GPS on your smartphone get you where you needed to go. It'll be showing you the quickest way to get where you're headed, routing you around traffic, giving you turn-by-turn directions, just as every other person in every other car is doing. And suddenly, your phone will die, and it will turn off, and you will realize you forgot to bring a car charger, and you will have no choice but to pull over, frozen. And it will occur to you that you have no idea where you are, and that you have completely lost all sense of direction, if you ever even knew what it was. And you will notice you are lost. And if you sit there, you will remember the other things that you have began noticing recently and think about your life. And possibly, you will realize you are even more lost than you think you are. Now, when you think of the word homesteading, what comes to mind? Does it bring images of Little House on the Prairie, of Laura and Mary in their bonnets and Pa playing his fiddle? It does to me. Of covered wagons and hard living in the days of old? Or does it make you think of growing a garden, milking a cow, and gathering eggs? Or since COVID made it all the rage on Instagram, maybe it's making your own homemade sourdough bread. For some people, they might think homesteading means doomsday prepping, getting ready for a catastrophe, building a bunker full of canned goods and guns. Others just see it as a part of history that is long gone, something that their great-great-grandparents might have been part of, but it has no real place in our future. Whatever it is, in most people's mind, the word homesteading, more often than not, has to do with getting in touch with the land, putting your hands in the soil and growing something. And it is. And it is much, much more than that. In 1862, now, I'm saying this without being able to research anything because I haven't been online in 10 months. I think it's 1862. You guys could tell me in a moment. Somewhere around that time, because there was a plethora of land available on the American frontier west of the Mississippi that hadn't been settled yet, Abraham Lincoln passed a piece of legislation called the Homestead Act that offered 160 acres to anyone willing to travel out west and make a claim on unsettled land. But it came with a catch. For the next 5 years, you had to prove the land, prove that you could make a go of living on it. In effect, you had to figure out how to, for 5 years, survive and make that piece of land self-sustainable for you and your family if you had one. But if you did that, and you lasted the full term, the land was yours free and clear. Over the next couple of decades, millions of people headed west in search of a better life. They made the trek not just from the heavy populated regions up and down the East Coast, but from all over the world. And one by one, they put their flags in a piece of ground, hoping to build a new life. Some made it through the 5 years, but many did not. If you drive through Oklahoma, Kansas, Montana, and many other western states today, you will see dilapidated remnants from many of those original homesteads. This is historically where the word we know of as homesteading comes from. Back then, they had to face incredible hardships to build a life for themselves and their families. Yes, they had to grow their own food, but they also had to figure out how to keep themselves alive, how to stay warm through terrible winters. There was the constant threat of disease, of being killed by wild animals, by hostile Indians. And travel, even to a town nearby, if there was one, was very slow and very hard. The work was hard, sun up till sundown and beyond, just trying to keep their families alive. And for most of them, they faced incredible loneliness on the frontier. Let us contrast that with life today. Most of us do not have to physically labor and toil from sunup to sundown every day to keep our families fed. Instead, we purchase nearly all of our food from meals or for our meals from grocery stores. We order it from smartphones and pull in as someone loads our car. We hit a drive-through on the way home, and someone hands our meal to us moments after we've ordered it, ready to eat. Our homes stay heated or cooled with the push of a thermostat button. We can be toasty warm in our houses even on the coldest days or nice and cool on the hottest. Most of us can make those changes on our smartphones from anywhere. We just tell our house to warm up to 72, and by the time we get there, it is done. There are no trees to cut, wood to chop or split, no stoves to load. And as far as fears go, there are no dangerous wild animals lurking in the woods outside our houses, no Indian attacks. And due to modern medicine, we don't have to fear that our children and spouses are going to die from a cold or fever. In general, we have no problem keeping alive. As a matter of fact, nowadays we are mostly upset that we have to die at all. The reason that I'm sharing this is to make the point that the biggest difference between life in the 1800s and life today is that back then most of their struggles were external. How to stay fed, stay warm, stay healthy, and stay alive. Physical difficulties that they had to endure. But today we have no problem staying alive. That's a given for most all of us. And although we've removed almost all the physical struggles, they have not gone away. They have only moved from external conflict and struggles to internal ones. Most of the conflict that we deal with today is inside our minds. A lot of the problem today is that most of us have too much ease and too much comfort, too much spare time. We cannot get out of our own heads. We are the most affluent Americans there have ever been, and by far the most unhealthy. In epidemic proportions, we are overweight and undernourished. These days, our bodies get little, if any, exercise. The only parts we do use are our thumbs, which are endlessly scrolling on social media feeds like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Forget about alcohol and drugs. Most of us are full-blown addicted to our smart devices, living for a hit of dopamine, the next like, the next follower, or the next headline. And our houses are stuffed to the brim with stuff. It's overflowing from our rooms, our closets, our pantries, and our garages. We built a multi-billion-dollar storage industry just to give us a place to store all the crap we have that we are never going to use. And yet, we want more. And who can blame us? It's so easy to get. When we want something today, we don't have to get in our car and drive to town to try to find it in a store. We just pick up our phone, push a button, and a day or two later, sometimes an hour or two later, it arrives at our door. With high-speed internet, we are all of a sudden connected to everyone, everywhere, all over the world, all of the time. We can follow their every move, and they can follow ours. We are constantly comparing ourselves to them. The house they live in, the cars they drive, the vacations they go on, and it is messing with our brains. I have heard it said that with these free social media platforms, what Instagram is actually selling is jealousy. What Twitter is selling is hate. And what Facebook is selling is you. It is clear that we are all living at a pace today that no one in the history of the world has ever had to before. And to say that we are not prepared for it is an understatement. We are all part of a great experiment. Hundreds of millions of people, all of all ages, for the first time in eternity, having access to anything and everything, and everyone in every place, every moment of every day, and our bodies are feeling it. They are collapsing under the weight of it all, emotionally and physically. And it is showing itself in anxiety, fear, depression, and suicide at epidemic scales. There is almost not a single family, neighbor, or even a person that I know who is not suffering from one or more of these things right now and on medication to combat the onslaught that only seems to be getting worse in our culture. The farmer and poet Wendell Berry says in his book, The Unsettling of America, "It is no wonder we are anxious. We should be. It is our bodies telling us something is wrong." Perhaps our response shouldn't be to take a pill to make the anxious feelings go away. Instead, we may need to look inward and upward to find the answers, to solve the problems we have created for ourselves. Thankfully, all these years later, homesteading has still survived. Albeit in a small, mighty way, lots of folks in and around cities and towns are growing backyard chickens and gardens, raising their own eggs, And some of them are moving to mini farms where they can lean into growing beef or pork or a greenhouse. Others spend weekends selling what they've grown at farmers markets or participate in CSAs or other community programs to source and support the growing of local food. With the recent pandemic, the instability of grocery store prices, and mistrust of big business interest, the homestead movement has been gaining ground, and people are rethinking where their food is coming from in tsunami proportions, as Joel Salatin said last year in his talk here at the festival. And they aren't just thinking about it, they are doing something about it. So are you. That is why you're here. That's why we are all here. As homesteaders today, we still want many of the same things that our forefathers did: a piece of ground, a home of our own, good health, a community to be part of, hope for our children, a life filled with meaning and purpose. And to achieve these goals, a good place to start is by asking these three questions. Is this good for me? Is this good for my family? Is this good for my community and the earth and the world? Of course, it is not only homesteaders who are asking these questions, but homesteading has a tendency to lead us to understand the big picture, to see how this thing is connected to that thing, and how this leads to that, which leads back to this, and causes us to say, oh my goodness, I never thought of that before. These kinds of questions will begin to at first wreak havoc on the life you have been living up until then. But in time, they will begin to lead you toward a life that is much, much more fulfilling and meaningful than the ones most of us have been living. I know it has changed my life for the better 1,000 times over. It's a bit overwhelming, all of this stuff, and of course, I have no idea how to fix any or all of it. I don't even know if it's possible, especially on a global scale. But for me, the answer is to find my own answer, to think seriously about my own life and what good health is for us, and then to do those things I need to do to make my world a better place. I believe the best thing I can do is positively affect the larger world is to take responsibility for my own life, for you to consider taking complete responsibility for your own. Part of that is what has led me up to what I'm doing now. I've been disconnected for the internet for the last 10 months. I was in Montana last summer, and something I'd been thinking about for a long time. And I decided to take a year off of the web. And so at the end of July, Indiana and I went off the web, and it's been 10 months now. No Google, no YouTube, no Amazon, no GPS, no digital connection to the world. Except this flip phone. But if you call me, I won't know who it is. When I answer, you'll say, hey, Rory, and I'll say, hey, how you doing? I won't know who you are. I'll ask some questions, and hopefully I'll figure it out. Okay, let me get back to where I am. To say that the last 10 months have been profound for me. Well, let me go back for a second. That really isn't a very big thing to do. It's a big thing for me to do, but I've traveled a lot, and I've asked a lot of people, and it's surprising how few people make these kind of choices. And it's not just all about technology, but technology is one of them. Most people will, put their phone away at night, maybe leave it in another room or something, make some smaller choices. But I'm surprised how few people are interested in taking some larger choice like that can make such a big difference. To say that the last 10 months have been profound for me is an understatement. I think until we take a deliberate break from it, we have no idea how much time we waste on the things that we've been told are going to save us incredible amounts of time. It's fairly easy for me to see that we have truly become the tools of our tools. Surprisingly, though, cutting the cord to the outside world hasn't been as difficult as I thought it would be. The good so far has outweighed the bad 100 times to 1. I am not sure what change will happen when this year is over, but I know I'll have a better understanding of how complicated the web is and all that it brings to our lives, and hopefully be better equipped to make good decisions for me and my family in the future. Although on the surface it was a choice to disconnect from the web, it was actually a choice to purposely try to connect deeper with my family, my community, my faith, with our land, and with myself. And it has made a big difference. I'd like to stop, not to stop, but I'd like to move on to just some things that I want to share with you. I'd like for you to consider thinking about as you go on your own homesteading journey. Things that I thought we could talk about, things that have made a profound difference in my own life. Number one, decide the life that you want. I mentioned earlier that I think homesteading today is less about planting a flag in the ground the way that our forefathers did and proving a piece of land and growing food specifically. I think it's more about planting a flag in our minds and making decisions to go our own way, to take charge and control of our lives. Decide the life that you want. As homesteaders today, we still need to know how to grow more nourishing food for our families. But I can't help but think that for most of us, it is not about just growing our food. It's about taking a path against most of the culture, choosing to find and build a more sustainable life. Now, if you've made that decision, most of us have tried to make decisions in our life, and nothing has happened, then I want to encourage you to go back and look at it. Chances are you didn't actually make that decision. You're still trying to decide if you want. Because once you decide something, once you truly, truly, truly decide, everything will change. Everything will change. It just takes a decision. Now is the time. Now is the only time. It's all that any of us have. Number two, the little things are the big things. It is always the same. The big things that we think are going to change everything in our lives, they end up not doing anything. It is the tiniest, smallest things that we do that change everything. When we were building a schoolhouse, we had built just the shell of the building, and I had no idea what we were going to do. And we had started a foundation, and I didn't know anything about how to do it. I didn't know what the next steps were. I didn't know how to raise any money or do anything like that for it. And so I ended up one day, I met a friend of ours down at Marcy Joe's, our family restaurant. And while I was there, someone asked me to come upstairs and say hi to someone who's been following our story for a while. And in just sort of the strangest chance encounter as we were moving along trying to make our way, which I meet hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, that person that happened to be there asked a couple questions about what we were doing that day. And I told him that we were downstairs meeting with this lady, Sam Lamb, to try and figure out how we could build a greenhouse for the school we're building. He said, "What school?" And he got in his car and he followed me back here, and we walked around and we showed him. And in a short amount of time, he came alongside of us and almost single-handedly made almost every single thing that you happen to see there. He made it all happen. And it's just a chance encounter. It had nothing to do with anything. We just keep moving along. In my life, again and again and again, it's small things that make all the difference. It's not the big things that we're doing. It's never the big things. It's the small things. I want to encourage you to make a plan. Make a really, really good plan, and then let God change it. People often ask me if there was a plan. Thank you. People often ask me if there was a plan behind what we're doing here at the farm, and I always say, yes, there is a master plan, but it is not mine. My friend Frank calls it progressive revelation. I wake up every day and I think, what you doing today, God? Which usually means, what am I supposed to do today? Where am I supposed to go? I have no idea where we're going. Probably 3 years ago, we had no idea you guys would all be sitting here. But that's the magic part of it. We don't know necessarily where it's leading to. I try to be pretty organized. I wake up every day, make a list first thing in the morning, and then God adjusts the list, and I throw all the stuff away, and we go down a different path because He's given me something else. And it's such a wonderful thing. most of the time, my favorite part about my own, whether it's music career or all the things that we've done, is it is never the things that I've done or that my wife has done that are inspiring to me. It's always the thing that God's done. Usually, the things that I've done, they work out fine. I know how hard I work to make something happen, and that's fine. It's the times when you think, oh my, this is impossible. This can't happen, and it happens, and all you can do is give God the glory because He's made it so clear that you had nothing to do with it. When I said make a plan and let God change it, one of the parts that I've come to realize is that God requires us to be incredibly brave. And so I have a phrase that I've been using for a long, long time, which is, go out on a limb. It is where all the good fruit is. And it will change everything. So most of us, this is probably the best way to look at it. Most of us have desires for the life that we want, for the family that we want, the love that we want, the job we want, all of those things. But we're afraid to make the steps to get there. We're very secure with where we are, and what if we think about what would happen if this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen. And so imagine we're all under a great big tree, and we're all striving for the very best fruit that life has to offer. But we're all right here under one tree. This is just a few of us. Imagine millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people all under one tree. It's all been picked. There's nothing there for us. What it requires is us to climb up that tree, to shimmy up that tree, find a limb that no one else would go out on, or most people won't. And you have to climb out on that limb and keep going, and it will start swinging and you will be terrified. And it is where all the good fruit is. But you have to go out on a limb to get it. For us, it's happened again and again. When I bought our farmhouse, the one that you see right there, I bought it in the summer of 1999, right about this time frame. And it happened, I might tell this story at the concert. It happened because I moved to Nashville in 95 to be a songwriter. And in 98, I had my first success. I had my first song recorded. And it was Colin Ray who recorded the song, who was a big country singer. And the song came out on the radio. It became a #1 song that December and did really well. I couldn't even imagine that I dreamed about it my whole life. It had happened. A few months later, I find out that we're going to make some royalties. Now, I had made hardly any money before that. I was a single father back then, and my two girls that were probably 9 and 11 at the time, we had just barely scraped by for a long, long time. And all of a sudden, we were going to make some money. And so I thought, well, I need to invest that money when it comes in a house. So me being the dumb country songwriter that I was, I had noticed that south of the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville on Hillsborough Road, there's a bunch of beautiful sort of mansion historic houses up and down that road. And I figured that's where all of the big country stars live. I heard some of them live there. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go get me one of those. So I headed south on Hillsborough Road, and I kept driving until I found one I could afford. 42 miles later on the right was a homemade for sale sign. This place was so run down and dilapidated. I think lots of people had looked at it before and passed for good reason. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to fix anything, build anything. I had no idea how much money. I had no idea what it would take, how much time it would take. I just bought it. And I remember right after that, I had a friend of mine, Terry Clinton, came and visited. And he was a home builder, fix-it-up guy. And he came and walked through. And I was so excited to have him walk through the farmhouse. And I I took him through the backside, and we walked all the way through, and we came through the front doors, and they were falling off, and I kind of kicked them open. We walked, and I was like, "What do you think?" And he said, "Are you out of your damn mind?" He said, "I would never do this in a million years, ever, ever." He said, "You got to have some big cojones to do this, or be awful dumb." I fell into the second category. But I remember that day while we were standing out there, looking at the big mistake I had made. He said, "I would never do this." He said, "I wish I would." He said, "Because the truth is, if you stick it out, it's going to turn into something incredible." And it has. But it required me to go out on a limb, to believe in something that I could not see. It was impossible. I had to trust God and go way, way out on a limb. It happened when I bought the farmhouse. It happened when I married Joey. It happened years later. We had this big red barn that you see was just a shop. And she and I were tired of traveling after our career had taken off, and we wanted to stay home. And we decided, what if we made a television show at home from our barn? I don't know, have you guys ever done that? Me either. But I had seen what God can do when you get out on a limb. So after a little while, the first time you do it, it's really, really scary. It's a miracle you climbed that tree and you got out on a limb. But when you see the results, the next time, you go a little quicker up that tree. Pretty soon, you're just looking for limbs. Matter of fact, I got a good friend of mine. He knows me, and he said, we talk a lot about cliff jumping, because I'm a cliff jumper. I always say, don't just stand there, jump off a cliff, because something will happen, especially if it's something you're very, very excited about. So what happened when we made a TV show at home, we had no idea what we were doing. Our friend Gabe, who's here in one of the booths, some other friends, we all got together, made a TV show at home, and somehow, without ever leaving our house, we ended up in people's living rooms every Friday night at 8:30, and it changed our lives. And it continued to change our lives all these years later. When my wife passed away and we needed to do something for a school for Indy, and we built a schoolhouse again, we had to go out on a limb. When we had this idea of making a festival, we had to go out on a limb. We have no idea if anyone will come. We have no idea if our farm is a good place to hold it. We have no idea if any speakers will come. We have no idea if it's going to rain. But here we are. One of my favorite things, how many of y'all were here last year for the festival? One of my favorite parts of it, we kind of called this our field of dreams last year, because we were imagining all this that we could sit on my porch or just be anywhere here on the farm, and we could imagine what it might look like out here. And so we kind of called it our own field of dreams, and we all got together in the concert hall and we watched, what's that movie called? Field of Dreams? Yeah. Sorry, it's been a long weekend already. And we imagined what this might be like, and then we were trying to figure out who we could bring that would really kick off our Homestead Festival to make it really, 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 really special. And when you're watching and you hear a guy say some of the things like that are said in that movie, which is James Earl Jones says, "Ray, they will come, Ray." So we decided to see if we could get Kevin Costner here last year, and we had to go out on a limb. To bring Kevin Costner here, we paid almost 3 times as much as I paid for my whole farm. And it was worth it. It was so good. It was so good. We may call him Kevin Costmore now. Go out on a limb, folks. It is where all the good fruit is. Next one. Just because you do not know what you're doing, that is no reason not to do it. You have got to be able to overcome fear. Fear is what usually paralyzes everyone. Over time, I've learned really quick a great way to potentially deal with fear, at least in my own life, and that is to run way ahead of it. As soon as a scary thought gets in my mind, I run as far ahead as I can. Like, for example, I don't have any social media. I don't have any way to see what the weather is this last couple of days, so I haven't looked at all. Everybody else is looking. They're terrified. They're excited. All those sort of things, because it could make a big difference if the weather's really, 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 really bad. But of course, I couldn't look at all. But I knew how complicated it would be if it just became terrible, terrible weather. And so I thought to myself, while everybody else is thinking about it, they're afraid. Well, Rory, what would happen? Like, everybody's come. We have to pay for all the speakers. We have to, even if nobody's here, we have to pay for it all. You could lose the farm. So, for me, what's exciting about that is I get the opportunity to say, all right, what happens if I lose the farm, which I do not want to. My wife is buried here. I got a spot picked out. I hope my children are here, my children's children's children. I hope it goes on for a long time. But suppose I did lose the farm. That's the first thing I have to run ahead. While they're all terrified, I run way ahead and I think, well, when I first moved to Nashville, my older girls and I lived in an apartment in Bellevue. It was a one-bedroom den. It had 3 swimming pools. It is their favorite part of their lives. My little girl, Indiana, would love it. Papa doesn't have to mow anything. He doesn't have to bale any hay. She doesn't have to do any chores. We would have the greatest adventure in an apartment. Honestly, we would have the greatest adventure. I don't want it to happen, but if I run way ahead and I think about the worst case scenario, and then I think about the best thing that could come out of the worst case scenario, it's powerful. We did it. I've done it again and again and again in so many different ways. And it's a powerful, powerful thing. Here's just a few more. You guys doing okay? A few more. I want to encourage you to bloom where you are planted. Wherever you are, all you folks have come from, most of you come from far away, a lot of different places. And as realtors say, it is all about location, location, location. But not just when you buy a house, in my opinion. I think it holds true for wherever you live. It is about deciding to live where you live. You must choose to be where you are. It is the most important thing. You cannot sit around hoping and wishing and waiting for the day when you have more land, you live somewhere else, when you don't live in this apartment, when you have your own farm or something else. You have to do what you can with where you are. Most people struggle waiting and wishing that they lived on a farm, had more land, more room, lived in a different climate in another part of the country. But the truth is, if you are not happy where you are now, you will not be happy somewhere else. You won't. If you are not happy with very little money, you will not be happy with lots of it. I want to encourage you to start with whatever you have, whatever money you have, whatever resources that you have for your homesteading journey. Do whatever you can. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It only matters that you begin. I want to encourage you to plant seeds. When you go home, plant seeds and let some of them be in the ground. What that means to me is, yes, we have a big corn patch, and I'm really excited about the garden, and my niece Megan has a big garden on the other side of the road, and my sister has a garden, and my nephew has a big garden at his house. We are all excited. We have lots of animals, all the things that we're doing. But the seeds that I'm most excited about are the ones that we're planting in the people around us. The things that we are doing when we're going out on a limb and not serving ourselves. One of the first things I think to myself when I have an idea, when something comes to my mind, the first thing I think, does it serve me? If it doesn't, it's probably a good idea. I want to encourage you to plant seeds in the people around you. My favorite thing, besides having all of you here and all of us getting to learn, and besides the fact that the reality is, I just really want everyone to come here and teach homesteading because I have so much to learn and I don't have to go anywhere to do it. But besides that, my favorite thing is all of my family and close friends are part of this. And they are the ones who are doing it, not me. I'm part of it, but they are doing it, and it is forever changing them. I know it is. It's incredible. So plant seeds all around you in the ones you love, in the ones you meet. Less is more. Much, 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 much more. The last 10 months with no Amazon button has been fascinating, to put it lightly. I have been purposely simplifying. I want less, not more. Like probably every single week, sometimes we'll move a dumpster in front of my house when I get really ambitious and I just want to carry stuff out and throw it away. It has been so fun for me to not be able to just respond and buy something that I think I need. Instead, there's a big distance between what I think I want, what I think I need, and what I really, really need. And most of the time, I don't end up getting it. So I want to encourage you to think about having less in your lives. If you have less, you will have more. Another one, I mentioned GPS earlier, and I want to mention that most of us, as you probably know, have no idea how to get anywhere anymore. Most people, when they hear that I'm going a year without the web, that's the first thing they want to talk about. They're like, I can't get out of my driveway. It's like, really? No, I can't go anywhere. It'd be impossible. They have forgotten how to go anywhere without their phones. And more than that, most of us have no idea where we actually are in relation to other places in the big picture on a map. And though our GPS will tell us, the first thing when we turn it on, it will say, you are here. You can see that on the screen, but it can't actually help us be here. I feel like I should invent an app that says, are you here? Because my problem is not about where I want to go and how quickly I can get there. My problem is I want to be here. Can I really be here? And I can't be here if I'm trying to be, if I'm trying to hold 100 conversations at one time, have access to everything else. I want to encourage you to try and be here. That's one of the hardest things for us to do, is to be present, to be where we are. Only here. Just a couple more. Get out of your head. One of the beautiful things about homesteading today, just like 150 years ago, is that it is a lot of work. When you have a garden that needs attention, animals that need care, just like the original homesteaders, you do not have time to worry about all this other crap. It's one of the blessings of homesteading is that it will fill your mind with things that are much more important. You'll be busy doing other things, so you can't sit around worrying about what somebody else is doing or what they have. Men, don't be afraid to grow up. I'm saying that for the ladies, for the men. These days, it is very hard for us to grow up, men in particular. How many young men, older men, are addicted to video games that we know? In their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, but they still think they are young men or they want to be young men. They do not know how to grow up, and they are not even trying to. I struggled with this for a long time too. When up until the time I turned 50, I was waiting to be grown. I was waiting to be an elder. When is it going to hit me? But I would be around all these other men. Some would be 20 or 25 or 30, and I felt like we were all the same. In my mind, but I knew they weren't. We weren't. They saw me older. I didn't see me older, but they saw me older. And I kept waiting for it to happen, and it doesn't happen because the world will not let it happen. You are not supposed to get older. There's not supposed to be any wrinkles. You're supposed to stay the same always, always, always. But we need to grow older. The world needs elders. And as a man, I was excited about it. And so it turned out, again, like the other things, you have to decide, I'm older. I want to be an elder. I choose to be one. I have to wake up every day and remind myself I'm not a child. It shouldn't be this hard. I'm pretty sure my dad did not have this problem. But we do today. I want to encourage you. I was in the service for 8 years, and so I wore a uniform back then, a long time ago. And then for about 15 years, I wore overalls every single day, all the time that Joey and I were together. And now I dress like this all the time. And even when it's really, really hot, we were baling hay the other day, and everybody else is comfortable. Not me. I'm looking for something more than comfort. I don't know what it is. I have no idea, but I got a long sleeve shirt buttoned up all the way, the whole time while we were baling hay. And I was in Montana with Joel Salatin, and he was riding in the car with me, and I was telling him, I said, Joel, I don't know why. It's like, I want to wear long pants and boots and a long sleeve shirt, whether I roll up the sleeves. I want to dress like this every day. It's what I've done for years. Why? Nobody else is. Everybody else is in shorts and flip-flops and tank tops. Everybody. What is that? Joel said, it's called dignity. And he said, it is missing in the culture today. I want to encourage men, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take your own path, especially to become an elder. Have some dignity. Ask yourself this question. My friend Matt Johnson, who's at Muletown Coffee, he's one of my very, very best friends. He asked me this, and I ask myself this every day. Who would you be if you were someone you admired? Who would you be? What would you do if you were someone you admired? It'll change you. Think about it. The bad stuff is usually the good stuff. In the fall of 2015, when Joey came home from all the cancer treatment, surgeries, chemo and radiation, when there's nothing more we could do, I had been scheduled to go to a story seminar about a screenwriting seminar on story in New York City with my daughter and my cousin. And of course, I wasn't going to go because our whole life had it was just incredibly difficult. But Joey knew that I had been with her for the last year. We'd just been in hotels and hospitals, and she said, you need to go. This is going to be a long journey, this next step. And so I went for 3 days. I went to New York City, and I was in a story seminar, and I thought I was learning how to write screenplays for film, but it turned out I learned something else. That whole thing that I talked about, how we struggle today with internal conflict, and back then it was all external conflict. I learned all that stuff there, and I realized how true it was. But what he told me that has really stayed with me is that if you want to live a great story, if you want to be part of a great story, it must have conflict. The harder, the most difficult it can be, the greater the story. We are not who we think we are. We are not who we say we are. We are what we do when we face incredible amounts of pressure. I realized from this guy teaching, that in that moment when my wife has stage 4 cancer, she's struggling, we're struggling with this, that at this moment, this will define, this will reveal who you really are. It was an opportunity. The bad stuff is the good stuff. And I've seen it happen again and again. So I want to encourage you. Yesterday, we were walking around in the late afternoon, and Sean and Beth Doherty came by. And they're speakers. If you haven't seen them, they're wonderful. Their children are doing the sheep shearing. They're grown children. They're also doing the timber frame and pig butchering and stuff. But they told me that 2 days ago in Ohio, their home burned to the ground. And they're here. And they're sad, they're brokenhearted, and they're giggling because they know that the future is going to be bright no matter what happens. They know that the end of one story is the beginning of another story. And although they would never have wanted this to happen, they know that this is the beginning of a brand new story. And I love that you can already see that even while they're grieving, they're excited to see what can happen. Their sons are here teaching timber frame. What kind of house are their kids going to build for them? Imagine it. When my wife passed away, I was lost for a long time. I'd really struggled because I had been part of the greatest love story I had ever heard of. Not just watched in a movie, not just read in a book. I was part of the greatest love story I had ever seen. I could not imagine that there could be anything more after that. I was certain that she and we were going to define the rest of my life, what we had done, what we had been. I didn't think that I had anything to offer, that I could possibly add anything to the story that God had written. I was positive. But I had no idea that when that chapter ended, God was about to begin writing a brand new one that in time, like today, I would wake up and pinch myself, wondering, how in the world am I so dang lucky? Because God has a way of, when one chapter ends, it is the beginning of something incredible. So I know there's a lot of people going through some difficulties, and I want to encourage you in your own story. When one chapter closes, when one story ends, a new one begins. Lastly, before I open the floor to a couple questions, can we stick around a couple more minutes? All right. I would not want to end this without telling you a couple things. If my wife Joey were here and she were, first off, she would love this. Oh, mercy, she would love this. She would be so excited about having you all here, what this has become. She would love every bit of it. If she were here, I was thinking today, what would she want to tell you? So I'm going to tell you a couple things that I feel certain she would say. Women, if you have a spouse that doesn't get this homesteading thing, love them anyway. And if something happens in your marriage and the love goes away, love them. She would remind you that love is a verb. It is not a feeling, contrary to what our favorite songs say. It is not what we feel. It is what we do. She would say, be brave. It is the hard things that make us stronger. She would remind you to strive for joy. Do not try to be happy. My little girl, bless her heart, from the time she's 3 years old, 4 years old, as soon as she starts talking, she would say, are you happy, Papa? And I would say, my heart's filled with joy. I don't know if I'm happy, but my heart's filled with joy. Happiness follows joy. It does. She would be passionate to you ladies to consider having babies at home. I'm telling you, she would wear you out. She was terrified of having babies. She was terrified of the whole experience and never wanted to have one. And then when she got pregnant, she decided to have one the hardest way you could do it. And she had it at home with just a midwife. And it was the greatest experience of her life. And that's what she would want to tell everybody, is consider it. She would also say, have lots of children if you want, but make sure you have one later in life, so you have a better chance of having one with Down syndrome. In the last month of her life, we were sitting in the living room, and she told her sisters and all of us that, and we laughed. We thought that was the greatest. She would also want me to remind you that in the end, this homesteading journey that we're on, the one that we are going on, is really all about faith, and sooner or later believing in and trusting in something greater than ourselves and seeking His ways, not our own. I don't know if anybody want a question or two before I go. If we don't have any questions, I'll head out from here. Anybody, you have a question? Yes, sir. Oop, no way I can hear that. All right, that's a good question. Is this being recorded? Yes, it's being recorded. So I meant to say this morning that we have a team of people this year recording every single talk in every tent and every stage, so that we can only be in one talk. I would have encouraged you to go be in a different one than mine, but I'm glad you're here. But just because you missed that talk doesn't mean you're going to miss it, because since you all have tickets here, they'll reach out to you when this stuff is all ready, and they'll be able to share all the stuff with you. One more question. All right, no more questions. Okay, one more. Here you go. Where can you buy one of these shirts? It says Rory on it, kind of underneath of here. I'll tell you after. Hey, so thank you so much for coming today, just coming to the festival, for being here, for my chance, giving me the chance to share my heart with you for a little while. I'm so excited that you're here. When we're done, I'm going to leave and go to if you'd want to say hi, If you want to take a picture, you want me to sign something, anything, come over to the Homestead Festival. My sister, the merch booth, my sister's over there. I'm going to go over there. I'll be there for a little while. I'd love to say hi to you, but that way I can get away from here and then get ready for the next talk. Thank you so much.